Uh, where I can't see myself. So can you see me and can you see my presentation?
Yes, ma'am. We
Yes,
can see
ma'am.
it.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So in the next 8 minutes, I will briefly cover the topic inclusion under three main heads. One, what is inclusion? Number two, the National Education Policy 2020 and inclusion. And third, its implementation on ground. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam once said, inclusion is a right, not a special privilege. It is estimated that there are about 93 million children worldwide with disabilities. And like all children, these also have their ambitions and desires. Like all children, they too need quality education. Yet, these children are often overlooked in policy making, thereby limiting their access to education. The National Education Policy 2020 believes that children who learn together learn to live together. Accordingly, the National Education Policy is based on four pillars. You can see them on the screen, on the slide. Access, equity, quality, and accountability. It aims at transforming our nation into an equitable and vibrant knowledge superpower by providing high quality education to all. So what is inclusive education? All for learners, for all learners. If the mission is education for all, the goal is to include all. I hope you all agree with this. We need to include all the children into the mainstream schooling. Before we proceed further, it is very important to understand inclusion. So let's look at the 5 R's and the 6 E's of inclusive education. The 5 R's, as you can see on the screen: reach, right, responsibility, relationship, respect. And the 6 E's are equity, equal access, equal opportunity, equal dignity, effective communication, and embrace culture. Now, when we speak about inclusion, related to this are three very important terms where teachers and parents often get confused. So let's look at the first term, exclusion. What do we mean by that? Exclusion basically means denying access to education. If you look at the visual, I think you can understand exclusion. The children, for whatever reason, whatever disability, they were excluded from the mainstream. Next important term is segregation, where the students with disability are provided education in separate, specially designed schools, completely isolated from the students without disability. Thus, there was just no interaction. Next is integration. What is meant by integration? This is a process of placing the students with disabilities in the existing mainstream educational institutions, but without modifying. The children had to adjust to the standardized requirements of such institutions. And finally, inclusion. So, what's the difference between integration and inclusion? Now, this involves inclusion, it involves integrating the young people with special needs into the mainstream educational institutions, but without taking them out of the classrooms and by setting up teaching learning experiences adapted to these learners. And this is where the difference lies in integration and inclusion. The schools have to change. They have to change to the specific needs of each learner. Definitely, this involves a lot of systemic reforms. This is a beautiful picture which I saw and I wanted to share with everyone. Integration, if you see, it's equality. Same kind of conditions are given to all the three children. Whereas in inclusion, you have been fair. This is what is inclusion. You are adapting, you are changing to the needs of the child. Now, in the new National Education Policy 2020, the word inclusion is all encompassing. And as you see on the screen, it covers a lot of areas. There's disability, culture, race, gender, age, religion, socio-economic status, all come under the word inclusion. I will now focus on one area of inclusion, and that is children with special needs. Now, who is a special child? A special child needs special attention and specific necessities that other children do not. And the state may declare this status for the purpose of offering benefits and assistance to the child's well-being and growth. This is again a beautiful picture which I found. Catch them before they fall. Look at that picture. It's our responsibility as teachers to catch these children, and it's their right. Let's understand that responsibility and right go together. This is not a very easy task. In our school, we have a zero rejection policy, and we do not believe in labeling a child in a hurry. We believe that identification and intervention go side by side, and they are the key to the success. Now, if you see the slide, we have streamlined this process in our school, and we have the steps shown to you. Observation by the teacher, by the general education teacher, is very important. Once the teacher has observed that something is amiss, some child needs some extra attention, she shortlists the child. Then She observes the child in greater detail. After this, she is provided with a checklist. Now, we are following the NCRT checklists in our school, and the teachers have been made aware of the checklist given out by the NCRT. Once the teacher has completed filling up the checklist, and she's sure and she's convinced that the child needs further intervention, she refers the child to the special educator. I think all the schools today need to have special educators, and we are lucky to have a special educator in our school. The special educator has to be an RCI registered, and they are the ones who are equipped to give out specific tests to the children who are brought to them. Once the special educator has given out the tests and is also convinced that the child needs extra inputs, they call for the parents. The counseling of parents is carried out, and the parents are advised to take the child to the authorities recognized by the government for verification and certification. And once the certificate has been given by the government, then adaptation and modification is carried out in school. Here, we have to adapt and modify our teaching strategies, the content, the curriculum, the assessment techniques according to the needs of the child. For each child, we make a specific learning plan. This is not an easy task. It's not a cakewalk. And the entire school has to get together to make this possible. All the stakeholders have to play a very important role. Since years, the mantra of our school at APS Nehru Road has always been no child left behind. Wouldn't it be great if we could look forward to a whole world in which no child will be left behind? In the end, I would like to say, to achieve inclusion and equity, we all need to work together, collaborate together, because none of us is as smart as all of us. And I would like to leave you with a parting thought. We will know that inclusive education has really become embedded in our culture when the term becomes obsolete. Thank you.
Thank you, Neena ma'am, for highlighting these, important areas, inclusion and sharing the examples how your school under your leadership is achieving those things. And absolutely, we all agree with you that we need more collaboration, we need more collaborative solutions, and we all can, certainly achieve that together. So thank you, Neena ma'am. I'll come back to you with questions.
Thank you.
With this, I would request next speaker, the Jyot ma'am. The Jyot ma'am, if we can have your perspective.
Yeah, good afternoon. The topic for interaction today, which we are all aware of and we are all into it at some stage or the other, is 21st century education, expectations, challenges, and solutions. Well, recent technological advances have affected many areas of our lives, including the way we communicate, collaborate, learn, and teach. These advances have changed our vocabulary, producing terms like digital natives, digital immigrants. We had not heard of a 19th century teacher or a 20th century education. But the moment you Google search for 21st century education, you get multiple choices. The biggest landmark change in the last decade has been the internet, with the society blending into digital technologies in all forms of life. Teaching per se in the 21st century is an altogether different phenomena. Never before could we think of learning happening the way it is now, everywhere, all the time, on all possible topics, supporting any possible learning style or preference. With that, expectations from education, teachers, and schools have also changed, and they are at an all time high. Holistic education, everyone talks of, is not just a trending term, but the new norm. Teachers are expected to look beyond the ordinary and adapt different styles of pedagogy. The age old one size fits all has long outgrown. Now we are expected to understand different styles of learners, personalize assessments, our teaching methodologies. So, what has it become? It's become a student centric norm today. 21st century learner, whom we talk of, needs to be globally aware. He should be media literate, a good communicator. He would also know what is it to be knowing economic literacy, would be civically engaged, to just name a few things which is expected of him. So as teachers, our roles also become quite wide. We need to imbibe in them super skills. And when we talk of these super skills of 21st century, I would like to highlight that communication plays a very important role, which helps them deliver thoughts, incite questions, and filter ideas and solutions. The next is collaboration, them working in groups to reach a goal, availing of talent and expertise of all the members of the group with smart work. Then critical thinking, the third one, which looks at the problems in a new way and helps link learning across subjects and disciplines. We talk of creativity, that is creating and exploring new approaches to getting things done innovatively. Other than these three, I would like to mention entrepreneurship, which can be considered a skill of its own. Inquiring and problem solving is the key. And that is what our B schools are doing. That is what MBAs master. Businesses run on this. We need to encourage our students to take, other than all these skills, which if we think that they are per se only for education, a human being, a child, moves out into the world from the school gate, and we hope that he carries with himself skills other than these, which are so very imperative. We need to encourage them to take ownership of community reach programs. Mental health and well being is another skill, which is a need of the present and for all future time in his life. Teachers no longer can be a sage on the stage, but they are to be mentors and facilitators by the side. And as NEP 2020 emphasizes, we do not need hordes of teachers who are churned out of B.Ed schools, which have mushroomed all around us, but people who are passionate for their profession and are well trained to take up such a pious cause. They are dealing with human lives. They are going to do something which affects the life of the child under their care, the characters which these children build, and the society in which they will step into in the long run. Teacher training, thus, has far reaching implications, and we need to be very serious about it. Assessments, too, need to have a broader outlook. Mugging information and spilling it into getting percentages is no longer required. Children have access to information in the palm of their hands. Application of information, understanding it in the right perspective is the need again. And the four important skills which we talked of all play a role there. They should become critical thinkers. What do we need to do to achieve our learning expectations? We need learner centered classrooms. All students have different personalities, goals, and needs. Offering personalized instruction is possible and desirable. When students are allowed to make their own choices, they own learning, increase motivation, and that is a recipe for better learning outcomes. We should have smart usage of digital platforms available to us. Digital integration for a thorough 21st century education is the need of the hour. We need to strategize to maximize its benefits. The pandemic itself has introduced hybrid teaching, blended learning, and it is for keeps. It is not going away. If we talk of different subjects, we can think of many strategies, we can think of many ways in which we can make it interesting. If I talk of languages, blog writing, even for beginners of English, has seemed to have a lot of change brought in. To be able to see live audience and establish their digital presence, that is something the children really would enjoy to do. Teachers could go digital. That would reduce their paperwork. That could help them organize their teaching resources, sharing links. They could be involved in digital discussions. Collaboration could be locally, nationally, globally. For creating these resources, you could have presentation projects with other educators. Students could make classroom activities and share with others. And once they do it, they would themselves believe that they are working for the real world. It would not be hidden behind their notebook, they would be open to others. People are using Twitter chats and WhatsApp to share research and ideas, stay update with current issues. Project learning, which we were all doing when we were doing formative assessments, summative assessments a few years back, which were disbanded. We were always doing project learning. And if we introduced flipped learning into this, flipped classrooms, that could enhance its usability. Then how could we help children have their positive digital footprint by using the social media to publish their content, share the resources? Coding is another thing where children are being pushed to participate. Slowly they would learn to enjoy it and they won't be looking back. Then AI is being blended across all subjects as suggested by CBSE2. It can be blended with all the subjects from class 1 to 12. Then children always like novelty. We could give them the Facebook for discussions and announcements. We could take them on virtual tours, which our school teachers were doing during the lockdown teaching. Social studies and science, labs and museum visits, all this was possible. And it was more interesting for children. They could see live things, 3D things. And if we think of all these challenges which are there in front of us, what solutions can we think of? We could personalize teaching. Teachers would need to identify learning styles through real-time observation and assessments, then plan, prioritize for an effective implementation. We could use digital platforms which best suit you. Visual learning like animation, assessments, record keeping, all is possible through digital means. And teachers obviously would get overwhelmed with this kind of workload that is coming by if they are not properly planned. We could have open classroom environment. We could be open to suggestions of children. We could be acceptive of contrary views, and we would need to make a curriculum in collaboration with students and their learning styles in mind. Once we review its effectiveness and update it from time to time, there is no reason why there wouldn't be participants to learning. Education is not to groom students for knowledge, survival, and careers, but to create future leaders and global citizens. Hence, understanding of environment, social, cultural, political, all the events in the world around them are important too. Values like tolerance, empathy, justice, and inclusion cannot be ignored. It is a great responsibility that a teacher shares when she enters the class. We could use creative approaches to filter great ideas and values into them. Literature, language, arts, culture, travel, everything makes them globally aware. If we have regular discussions on current events and news update and create awareness and empathy for fairness through conversations and examples, we are sure to make a change in the present times. And the teachers of the 21st century are undeniably dealing with new challenges, but we also need to note that they are now more accountable for a student's overall development, laying the foundation for a lifelong progress. These challenges are there are always challenges for us, but if they have changed, so have the resources changed, so have the rewards changed, and constant new updates in education sector and the teaching scenario needs to change continuously if we have to be progressive in our outlook. I wish that we all open the windows of our mind and look at the world. And it is possible to look at the world through tinted glasses. It is possible to dream and realize them too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divjot ma'am, and thank you for sharing these very strong and important thoughts and ideas. You also talked about the challenges and the solutions which we can have. You also talked about 21st age skills and why we need to adopt those skills. To create an environment where we can create global citizens. You also talked about the values which we need to emphasize upon in today's time. So thank you, Gurjot ma'am. I'll come back to you with questions. So thank you, Divjot ma'am, once again. Now, with this, I would request Karishma Samiji, Karishma ma'am, if we can have your ideas, your perspective.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Uh, Today, I'm going to be talking about equitable and inclusive education, uh, a very important part of the NEP, and all the aspects that they have taken into consideration, and about the situation and how they're going to handle it. So, first of all, while this education system has made a steady progress towards bringing a lot of gender and social category gaps, but there are a lot of discrepancies which are still there. NEP has largely focused on the SEDGS, that is the socially, economically disadvantaged groups, based on gender identities, where we talk about females and transgenders, the socio-cultural identities, which include the SC, STs, OBCs, and other minority groups, the geographical identities, the rural people and the tribal people as well, people with disabilities, and the socio-economic conditions where people are poor or there are children victims of trafficking or organ transplant, etc. So the policy recognizes the importance of creating a mechanism for providing the children with special needs or the Divyang with the same opportunities for obtaining the quality education as any other child. And while it has focused on each sector of the society and intends to give the access of education, the quality of education that we have right now in India, especially in the government sector, is quite bad. Uh, Especially if we talk about the poor states where the funding is very less, there, the issues are quite worse. So the poor quality of the schools and the rudimentary physical and human infrastructure is one of the major reasons why a lot of children are dropping out of schools. So even when we are trying to provide the proper education to the children, uh, since there are not proper infrastructures, there are no sanitary, there are no washrooms, etc. A lot of children are not able to go to school. Also, when we talk about the funding, so under the constitution, the responsibility for education is shared between the central and the state government, and the central sets all the rules, policies, and the framework, whereas it's the state which defines how they're going to implement and what resources are they going to put into the educational system on ground. So this has become a very exuberating problem since the states, uh, being, some states being rich, their funds are better. There's some states which are not doing so well, so their funding for education is less. So this is one of the major issues which I think, although the policy has been made so well, but implementing all those things and being able to inclusively include all the children from various sectors of the society, it's going to be a hard task. uh, Another point that I had noticed in NEP is that they talk about providing cycles and walking groups for children who have no schools nearby and they have to, move from one place to another. Now, although it sounds nice, providing cycles and walking groups, but how are they going to implement on the safety of the children, and are there going to be any awarenesses on how they're going to move from one place to another, etc. uh, I am very appreciative of the NAP since they are focusing on the SEDDS, but how exactly are they going to create that awareness among the people so that they actually send the children to schools, especially children with disabilities, uh, people who are underprivileged? If they have children with disabilities, they really don't, value the person, and sending them to schools is not one of their priorities. So first of all, we really need to make everybody aware that those kids also need some literacy, some numeracy, so that they can survive. Also, um, specifically for disabled, I would say that they all have special needs. And while I was reading the NEP, they have talked about providing home schooling for kids with special needs. But when we are not able to give the basic education to the regular students, how are they planning to implement homeschooling and special schooling for children with special needs? So that is another major drawback, and the implementation is going to be a tough job. Another critical evaluation was after post corona. So it's very clear that classrooms and the learning process is not going to be same post corona, and a budgetary provision is a must to address the challenges that the students are going to face. Now, although private schools were still at par and we were able to provide the online education to the children, but at this, whole Corona time, those children from government schools have missed out on their learning process for the 1 year, and we are still not sure how are we going to provide them the education after this. Are they going to come back to schools because they don't have technologically advanced lives. So, what is the way they're going to actually impart education? So, that's one major issue which I see, because schools were completely shut down for 1 year. And lastly, it's always a corruption issue that comes up in the educational sector, and the lack of financial resources, which is a major concern for the policy implementation. And we need very outstanding teacher preparation, recruitment systems, as well as teacher training institutes, so that we have well educated people who are actually imparting good knowledge and learning to the children of our country. So, although the policy is amazingly written, but there are a lot of flaws which are going to come when the implementation is going to start. So, that's the major concern as per me. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure being able to connect with very educative and very strong leaders of different schools.
Thank you, Karishma ji, for joining and for sharing your thoughts from the, I would say, the modern age perspective. So, thank you for sharing that. You talked about, the challenges. The policy, you talked about that policy is a wonderful initiative, but the shortcomings of finance for the government schools, or finance for the people who have not the advantage, or luxury of going to the good schools. So you also talked about that we need a strong system for teachers recruitment training. In fact, a lot of educators, a lot of leaders who have participated in our previous sessions, they also talked about this, that teachers are the soul of any institution. But
Yeah,
many school leaders also share that most of the teachers don't choose teaching as profession as their first choice. That is why
definitely. That's one of the major problems.
that
Yeah,
could be a reason that we don't have a self motivated teachers or school leaders in that abundance. So most of the school leaders have cited this they also encourage that we need to have that kind of environment where we can have teaching as an aspirational profession. You also talked about the challenges in funding, and
yeah. And another thing is people are not sensitive to the, children, especially coming from disadvantaged families or who are facing any disability or a learning disability. So labeling is one thing which really hampers their progress towards getting educated, because they are labeled, they are seen differently, they are people are not sensitive to their problems. So
right.
that's also one
So
issue that we.
I'm sure Divjot ma'am or Neena ma'am would share more detail on that. But I personally believe most of the people who come from a similar background, even they don't find that kind of sensitivity towards those students. So that could be a lack of training, or that could be lack
Yeah,
of some other thing. I'm sure Divjot ma'am and Neena ma'am, when we would coming back to them, and during the question part would be sharing more on that. So with this, now I would request, thank you, Karishma ji, for sharing these thoughts.
thank you.
Now I would request, I'll come back to you for the questions. I would request Jaswinder sir, over to you. Can we have your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Rajulji. But just to let you know, I think Anita ma'am has already joined in. You can
Oh,
always
I'm
call her
sorry, I
later
didn't
on.
notice that. Anita
I
ma'am, have you
noticed that
joined?
twice or thrice. She was having issues, but if you can find out. But anyway,
Anita
I
ma'am,
will.
do we have your presence?
Yeah, good.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Good
I'm sorry.
evening, all of
I
you.
was, I was,
Actually, due to some network problem and the management meeting going on, that's why I've joined little
right.
bit late.
Okay,
Okay, sorry
okay.
for that. Myself,
Welcome,
yeah,
and
yeah.
thank you for joining. So, Anita ma'am,
Yeah.
your perspective, your interpretation on national education policy.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That only that my topic is that ki how the National Education Policy 2020 can help us restructure our current education. Are we able to restructure our current education? When I start arguing, some people, some are that they are saying that crucial for giving an in-depth, strong foundation, while others state that it promotes rote learning and cutthroat competition that is building unnecessary pressure on the student. That is the previous education policy. I personally myself find in between these two extremes. But if we talk about the restructure of the new education policy, the NEP can help us restructure current education system. That now, if we delve into what can be possible measures to ensure that the policy sees its really implementation on the ground level. I have few suggestions to touch upon some of the reform that may be needed, and that is, I think, NEPs has all these things implemented on the every page of that NEPs. Institutional and structural, if we talk about the institution structural, I think it is in the foundation classes to begin with structure. Changes need to be encouraged in the infrastructure which allow interaction, group learning, and less of a rat race and competition bind. That we talk about that more colorful and random arrangements while an underlying theme which help people to associate and accept the change being suggested in the new policy framework. The physical infrastructure changes can be brought in a phased manner by innovative use of existing resources to ensure that this does not create a financial burden on the institution itself. Training material and pedagogy. Pedagogy needs to be more customized and ensure participative learning in the class. The training methodology should help in engaging students innovatively in a manner that is not defined just by the performance of the student, but by the active participation and their innovatives. We must focus on the innovative ideas of the student, not about the what they have given in the form of file or the project. We just give the raw material to the students and find out how creative they are. Not giving the topic, we have to give the raw material and creativeness, and see that how the student can creative all the things. The thought, we have the trained teacher, we must have the training of the teachers in this way that they can go through they can interact, they can they can even see, they can be able to see the mind of their child, what is going on inside the mind, and they allow the student to discuss everything. Use of digital technology, that the COVID time we have all of us have used a lot of technologies and all these, and after the COVID gone, the school opens, and now we are again in the frame all these things of that pen paper and all these. I personally feel that we have to allow the student to come on the Facebook page also, come on the Twitter page also. The senior students can give their ideas, they can give their own ideas. We must give them freedom to share their ideas, to show their talent in the big platform. Digital technology is a limited it not be a limited, it must be the use as a now the new technologies all have to be used by the student, and the teachers also must be allowed to use they have to the teacher training in this way that they must be update themselves. The teachers must update themselves, and they must know what the child needs. If the 40 students in our class, the 40 students are always different they have from different group, they have from different background, they have from different IQ level, they have different IQ level, they have their brain different. The teacher is such a teacher's training is in this way that they must know, they being able to understand the demand of each and every child. Then only we can give the best education, because now we are talking about the skill education, and skill can be provided only when we have the skilled teachers. Mindset reform karna padega, we have to reform the things. Finishing homework cannot be the end of the work. This is not we have to finish the chapters, we have to finish the homework. This is not the end of the work. Students need to look beyond their notebooks and observe and make perspectives on the world around them. I feel it is important to develop a very normal, without any external force culture that stimulate children to observe and be attentive to their surroundings. Different sort of exercises may be developed to help students to learn from the communities around. We must make a community. In our school, I have made in my school that we have a community society. The students can take part on that. They have the batches and they go nearby communities, and they directly connect themselves the what they need, what our society needs. what the lower society needs, what the middle class they need. Each student may be given ownership, responsibility of one lane in his or her locality. Understanding how elderly peoples live there. Do maids children go to school? Do they need help? The children have to sharing thoughts always. They can help them. The maid children can be helped by our children by giving them used books, used notebooks, and all these important things must be developed the skill. We have developed the skill. The skill means we develop them the helping skill. We develop them the observing skill. We develop them the presenting skill. And these are the skill based education we can. We can plan in this way also. We have one gardener in our school. Every time they are doing the work, plants, nurturing the plants and all these, we can send our school children, our class children to nearby the garden, and they only observe how gardener loving their plants and taking care of their plants, how they are digging the soil, how they are planting, how they are watering the plants. And this is the observation. We must improve the observation skill. That NAP also focused on that thing. We must implement these things in the school level also. To ensure that this happen, mindset reform is needed in three levels: parents, teachers, school, and community as a whole. We must need this implementation with the parents also. All these three players must get rid of those processes that inhibit the overall growth of a child. Every time the parents are focusing on the marks oriented result only, and they are having the statement what society says, समाज क्या कहेगा, इससे निकलना पड़ेगा हमें. Uh, we must counsel our parents. We have the counseling of the parent कि आप your child has some different ability also. Do not focus only on the marks. Do not focus on the mug up only. However, it is also important that this revolution in the education system should not erase some of the most intrinsic and important values of our system, but blend them well in the new principles and processes of new education policy. I also calls for a change in the overall approach where the outcomes of the education are valued and not merely the process. In the TVET system in the country, there is a concept of recognition of prior learning whereby the certification is provided for the skill set and may have been acquired through informal learning, work-based experience. Previously, we also have the FAS system and SAS system where work-based education we are having. In our time, we have learned the book binding system, and the same the NEP says we give after class 12th, we have to imbibe our student with some talent, with the some approach, some technical talent, with the some vocational courses also we have launching the vocational courses in our CBSE pattern, and this will create the this make the child able to earn his or her livelihood. That is the training, and training part is very important. The teachers training, that the always we are saying that some of the most of the teachers, I think 50% of the teachers are there by chance they become the teacher. Maybe the financial problem or they have not any job, this one. So they do not have the we can say they do not have any motivation himself. They are coming to the for the time pass only. What they have not having the feeling of their children. They are not understanding we have the responsibility of our children. We have the responsibility of a society. Though some of the doing very well, so first we need to train our teachers. Always we need to train our teachers, to motivate our teachers, to that counsel our teachers that this job you are having a very important job, so you do this job with very honesty and focus on your each and every child, so that we can build a strong society, a strong educational society, and platform a nation also. We are the builders, we are the educators, we are the builders, and teachers are also educators. They must understand that the role the principals are playing, the same role is playing with the by the teachers also. So they must understand the teacher it is an important job. It is not in the time. It is a very crucial, very important job. The teachers are always more important than the doctors and the engineers because teachers made them. Always we are having this lot of quotations also. We are all, every time we read, the teachers made engineer, doctors, everything. So then the teacher is always by salute by the management. They must, and teachers also give the security point. They must also secured by the principal, by the management, that they are the most important part of our school. Then only we can be together, parents, teachers, and community as a whole, as a school, as a management, can implement all these parts of the NEPs and make the education as a strong weapon. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita ma'am. Thank you for sharing these important parts. You talked about, why we need more pedagogical evolution, and NEP makes a strong promise in that direction. You also suggested that we all need to embrace technology. That is the not optional anymore. We have to opt for technology. Thank you for suggesting that. You also talked about the teachers are the key, and they certainly need to empower. The teachers training is going to be key, in fact, for the successful implementation of this national education policy.
Mm.
You talked about that there are three kind of mindset and we need to change, that needs to be evolved at every level, be it parents, teachers, and the community. You also, same time, you also talked about that community level learning. We need to create an ecosystem. We need to create an environment where students can learn from communities around them. So
As
you also talked about.
the strong part of India is the values. We never forget about the values, and values from the community only we can come.
Absolutely, absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you, Anita ma'am, for joining and sharing
yeah.
these valuable thoughts. Thank you. I'll come back to you with questions. With
Thank you
this,
for
I would,
giving this opportunity. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now, I would request Jaswinder sir, sir, if we can have your ideas.
Yep. Thank you, Rajulji. And first of all, I've heard Nina ma'am, beautiful, beautiful presentation. Loved it with all the graphics. Divjot ma'am, you also did a great presentation. This is what we say, that educationists can use technology to give the best that is there. Ma'am, you talked about a lot about social skills. You've talked about how do we bring in social skills, and that is something which we talk about, what Anita ma'am also said. If social skills are brought in, we can actually bring this thing of each one teach one. Long back when I was a kid, when I was studying, there was a slogan saying each one teach one. If we can do that, I'm sure we can go to the next level, because students can also teach other students. If there are people who are underprivileged or the have nots, let's not use that have nots, but people who are disadvantaged, they can be taught. And let me tell you one thing, as teachers, when we teach, we learn more. So if a student explains something to a fellow student, he or she will learn more. So that is something which works excellent. We have talked about technology in education. NEP talks about a lot of disruption. I call this a very disruptive policy, where, but the whole part is only disruption can, create the kind of effect that we are looking at. We need young people to come and participate in this disruption and work towards it. But we will have to use a tool, and that tool is technology. Everybody's talked about technology. Ma'am, you also talked about flipped classrooms. That is the future. Because one thing, let me tell you, whatever we may do, we will never be able to teach our teachers to be at par with our students, because these young students run faster than us. From being a teacher, we'll have to be a facilitator. So for that, the teacher training in terms of how to use technology, how to source information, how to uh, get the right kind of information, and how to make it a discussion based, query based classroom. That is what is important. And if we are able to do that, our teachers, if they become facilitators, I don't think there's going to be any problem, because that is where we will get those critical thinking skills from kids. That's where we'll allow students to, or make them think, make them ask questions. Because what has happened is this current generation has stopped asking questions. They get whatever they want, so they're not asking questions. So something very, very important that we need to work on, there is something there. My point here is, nobody's touched upon language component, so I'm going to go a little deep into what is happening. What is it that NEP 2020 is talking about language. The first and the most important thing, which a lot of people are talking about, is that this policy says that kids, children during the foundation years and up to the class 8 can be, mark my word, it is not can be,